Most travelers think carry-on rules are simple, but after 15 years in the air, I can tell you this with confidence. Almost everyone is doing it wrong. Welcome back to Above and Beyond. I'm Mila, your personal in-flight guide and former full-time chaos manager. After more than a decade of watching luggage battles that rival a Black Friday baggage carousel, I've learned that carry-on travel isn't about rules. It's about psychology, timing, and understanding the system airlines never fully explain. Today's video is about what everyone gets wrong about carry-on travel. And no, airlines will never warn you. I already know what some of you are thinking. Mila, I follow the 311 liquid rule. I check the size limits. I can roll a t-shirt like a professional sushi chef. I've mastered carry-on travel. And here's my honest response. Are you sure? Do you really understand what changes the moment your bag is forced to be gate checked? Do you know that asking a flight attendant to lift your bag can quietly put both of you in a risky situation? Do you realize that your personal item is actually the most powerful tool you have, yet most people waste it on a half-eaten snack in a paperback? The policies listed on airline websites look clean and reassuring, but they're like glossy brochures for used cars. They show you the shine, not the cracks. Airlines have built a system that encourages you to bring everything on board while quietly making that process stressful, unpredictable, and sometimes expensive. They want the checked bag fee, but they don't want the responsibility of handling your belongings. It's a smart business model, and it only works because passengers don't know how to play it. Today, I'm going to walk you through 15 real industry secrets that turn you from someone who follows the rules into someone who leverages them. We're talking about avoiding surprise gate fees, reducing boarding stress, protecting valuables, and being the calmest person in your row. This isn't theory. It's hard-earned knowledge from working the aisle for 15 years. If you're ready to treat your next flight like a tactical operation instead of a guessing game, subscribe now. And while you're here, tell me in the comments what your worst carry-on headache has been: lost bin space, security delays, or surprise gate checks. Because all of that starts with the first mistake most travelers make: misunderstanding carry-on dimensions the moment they reach the gate. Because all of that starts with the first mistake most travelers make: misunderstanding carry-on dimensions the moment they reach the gate. The airline website lists size limits, and people treat those numbers like the full story, but that's only the headline. The real judgment happens face-to-face, under bright lights, 5 minutes before boarding. That's where the illusion of the personal item becomes the most important advantage you have. Everyone obsesses over the roller bag, yet the personal item is the true power move. It only has to fit under the seat, and unlike roller bags, it usually isn't measured with a rigid sizer. This is where smart travelers place a soft-sided backpack or duffel that can compress when needed. I've watched passengers carry bags that were technically carry-on size, but because they were flexible and visually looked like personal items, they passed without a second glance. This bag should hold everything that matters: electronics, medications, valuables, and a full change of clothes. If your main bag is taken from you, this one saves the trip. The next trap is what I call the wheels and handles tax. When airlines list dimensions like 22 by 14 by 9 inches, they mean the entire bag, not just the fabric body. Wheels, side handles, and the telescoping handle in its collapsed position all count. Most people measure only the soft shell and assume they're safe. Then the bag doesn't fit the metal frame at the gate, and suddenly they're paying a steep gate check fee. If your bag barely meets the limit, you're gambling. Bags marketed as international carry-on or under-seat compliant are often designed for efficiency, not maximum volume, and they tend to survive gate scrutiny far better. Always measure the wheels. Then there's the gate agent's visual test, which is never written down but absolutely real. Carry-on bags are meant to have firm edges. If you pack yours until the zipper strains and the sides bow outward, it looks larger than it is. That visual bulge alone can trigger a gate check. If you're worried, keep the top front pocket light. That area is the most visible from the agent's angle. A streamlined bag looks compliant, even when it's full. Weight is another quiet risk. Most U.S. domestic airlines don't enforce carry-on weight strictly, but many international and budget carriers do, often capping it around 15 to 22 pounds. Here's the danger. If your heavy carry-on is forced to be gate checked because bins are full, it becomes checked baggage instantly. At that point, weight limits apply, and overweight fees can be far higher than the original checked bag fee. Weigh your bag at home. A simple luggage scale pays for itself the first time it saves you. Finally, there's the regional jet trap. If your connection is on a small aircraft, often identified by a 4-digit flight number, your roller bag may never fit overhead at all. Those bins are designed for backpacks, not standard carry-ons. The smart move is to ask at the main counter to valet check your bag. It's usually free, it travels plane-side, and you get it back on the jet bridge when you land. That avoids the baggage carousel entirely and keeps you moving, which brings us to where tension really spikes, the overhead bin battleground itself. This is where the collective anxiety of air travel shows up all at once. The overhead bin is the most valuable real estate on the aircraft, and everyone knows it. Space is limited, time is short, and emotions run high. Understanding how this space actually works is the difference between a calm boarding and a silent standoff. The first mistake people make here is committing what I call the personal item sin. If your jacket, purse, tote, or small backpack fits under the seat in front of you, that is exactly where it belongs. Placing small items in the overhead bin steals space from roller bags and forces later boarding passengers into gate checks they didn't plan for. This is why flights feel tense before they even push back. The unwritten rule is simple. Overhead bins are for carry-on size bags only. If a flight is full, I will walk down the aisle and ask people to move smaller items under the seat. It's not personal. It's crowd control. Next is the vertical versus horizontal mystery. Overhead bins are not all created equal. Older aircraft use shelf-style bins that close downward, while newer planes use taller pivot bins that close upward like a clamshell. In pivot bins, your bag must be placed on its side with the wheels first, standing vertically like a book on a shelf. In older shelf bins, the bag usually needs to lie flat. When someone tries to load a bag the wrong way, the bin won't close, boarding stops, and frustration spreads instantly. Knowing the correct orientation saves time for everyone. Then there's the golden rule of overhead bins: never touch another passenger's bag. I've seen people try to rearrange luggage to force their own bag in, and it rarely ends well. Bags get damaged, tempers flare, and accusations fly. If you can't make your bag fit because the space is poorly used, call a flight attendant. We are trained to reorganize bins efficiently and safely. If something is damaged while we do it, the responsibility is on the airline. If you do it and a bag falls on someone, it's on you. This leads directly into the truth about priority boarding. Many passengers think they're paying for early access or a better seat. That's not the real benefit. You pay for priority boarding to secure overhead bin space near your seat. That's the entire value. If you board late, your bag may end up several rows away or be taken from you at the door. Think of priority boarding as insurance against a gate check fee and the stress that comes with it. Seat location also matters more than people realize. If you're seated in a bulkhead or exit row, you cannot keep anything on the floor during takeoff and landing. Your personal item must go overhead, which reduces available space. If you choose these seats, you need to board early. Once the seatbelt sign is off, you can retrieve your personal item and place it at your feet. But during critical phases of flight, overhead space is mandatory. Once the bins are closed and the doors are shut, the battle may be over, but your carry-on now becomes your command center. How you manage it mid-flight determines both comfort and crisis readiness, which is exactly where the next set of mistakes usually happen. Once the aircraft door is closed, your carry-on stops being just luggage and becomes your base of operations for the entire flight. This is where preparation turns into comfort or chaos, depending on how well you planned. The first rule at this stage is what I call the valuables vow. I have seen too many heartbreaking moments when checked bags were delayed or lost, and passengers realized too late that irreplaceable items were inside. If you cannot afford to lose something, it must be in your carry-on. That includes prescriptions, passports, keys, electronics, jewelry, cash, sentimental items, and anything critical for work. This isn't paranoia, it's realism. Closely tied to that is how you pack for access. Your carry-on should not require a full unpacking performance once you're on board. Items you may need during the flight, such as headphones, medications, charging cables, snacks, and documents, should live in an outer pocket or near the top. This prevents the awkward aisle ballet where one person blocks 50 others while digging through a bag. Efficient access keeps the cabin moving and keeps attention off you. Now we need to address one of the biggest myths in air travel, the idea that flight attendants are responsible for lifting passenger bags. Officially, lifting carry-on luggage is not part of our job description. We are trained not to do it because if we're injured while lifting a passenger's bag, many airlines will not cover it under workers' compensation. When we help, it's a courtesy, not an obligation. This is why asking matters. If you need help, the smartest approach is to first ask a nearby passenger. If you must ask a flight attendant, frame it respectfully and acknowledge the assistance. Saying something like, "Would you mind helping me with this? It's light," makes a difference. It signals awareness and reduces risk. Mid-flight overhead access is another area where small missteps create unnecessary tension. When you need something from the overhead bin, timing matters. Always wait for a natural break, such as when the aisle seat passenger stands up or when service is completely finished. Never climb over someone who is sleeping or working. When you open the bin, don't leave it open while you search. Remove your bag, close the bin immediately, and then retrieve what you need at your seat. Open bins are a head injury hazard, and we watch them closely. As landing approaches, another familiar scene plays out. The aircraft reaches the gate, and suddenly half the cabin stands up, even though the door hasn't opened. This is what I call the deplaning standoff. Standing early doesn't get you off faster. It only crowds the aisle and makes it harder for crew members to complete final safety checks. The calm strategy is to remain seated until the rows ahead of you begin moving. Deplaning is a sequence, not a race. Staying seated keeps the flow smooth and reduces stress for everyone. Finally, there's one last place where carry-on mistakes quietly cost people time: the security line on the next flight. Smart travelers stage their bags before reaching the scanner. Liquids, laptops, tablets, and wallets should be positioned near the top or in an external pocket. Use the time in line to prepare instead of waiting until you reach the conveyor belt. When you're ready to unload immediately, you save seconds, and in busy security lines, those seconds multiply into minutes. All of these details may seem small, but together they form the difference between fighting the system and working with it, which brings us to the final stretch of carry-on mastery, where mindset turns these tactics into second nature. Which brings us to the final stretch of carry-on mastery, where mindset turns all of these tactics into second nature. The biggest mistake travelers make at this stage isn't about packing or positioning. It's believing that carry-on travel is purely mechanical. It's not. It's psychological. Airlines rely on passengers feeling rushed, uncertain, and reactive. The calmer and more deliberate you are, the more control you retain over your experience. Carry-on travel works best when you stop thinking like a passenger who is trying not to get in trouble and start thinking like someone who understands the flow of the system. Every step, from boarding to deplaning, rewards predictability. When your bag is packed logically, when your personal item is treated as a lifeline instead of an afterthought, and when you move only when movement actually matters, stress fades into the background. You're no longer competing for space or reacting to surprises, you're anticipating them. Another key shift is understanding that speed is rarely the advantage people think it is. Rushing down the aisle, forcing a bag into a tight bin, or standing the second the seatbelt sign goes off doesn't make the process faster. It makes it messier. The smoothest travelers I see aren't the quickest. They're the ones who wait for the right moment, know exactly where their items are, and move with intention instead of urgency. This mindset also protects your energy. Travel fatigue often doesn't come from distance. It comes from friction. Every small struggle adds up. Searching for space, lifting awkward weight, worrying about fees, or arguing silently with the overhead bin drains more energy than the flight itself. When you eliminate those friction points, travel feels lighter even when it isn't. Perhaps the most powerful realization is this: airlines depend on passengers following written rules while ignoring unwritten ones. Once you understand both, you stop feeling at the mercy of the process. You know why certain announcements are made, why boarding is structured the way it is, and why some passengers seem unaffected while others are visibly stressed. That difference isn't luck, it's knowledge. Carry-on travel isn't about squeezing more into a bag. It's about reducing what can go wrong. And when you approach it that way, you don't just travel more efficiently, you travel with confidence. With everything we've covered now in place, there's only one thing left to do: tie it all together and lock in the habits that make these strategies automatic every time you fly. Tie it all together and lock in the habits that make these strategies automatic every time you fly. Once carry-on travel stops feeling like a gamble, everything about flying changes. You're no longer bracing for surprises at the gate or silently hoping your bag makes it on board. You know how the system works, and more importantly, you know how to work within it without stress or confrontation. The 15 mistakes and secrets you've learned aren't complicated, but they are powerful. Treat your personal item like your lifeline, because it is. Measure your bag honestly, including wheels and handles. Pack with access in mind, not just capacity. Respect the unwritten rules of the overhead bin, because that shared space determines the mood of the entire cabin. When you understand these principles, you stop reacting to problems and start preventing them before they happen. The calmest travelers aren't the ones with the smallest bags or the fanciest luggage. They're the ones who know when to move and when to wait. They don't rush the aisle. They don't fight for space. They don't argue with gate agents or strain their backs trying to prove independence. They let the system flow around them while quietly protecting what matters most. Carry-on travel is also about respect for your own time, your body, and the people around you. When you follow both the written and unwritten rules, you make the flight easier not just for yourself, but for the crew and fellow passengers as well. That's why experienced travelers always seem unbothered. They aren't lucky. They're informed. If this feels like a masterclass airlines never wanted you to attend, that's because it is. These are the details that don't fit neatly on a policy page but make a massive difference in real life. Once you see them, you can't unsee them, and you'll notice how differently you move through airports and cabins from now on. If you found value in this breakdown, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. I share the things you only learn after years in the aisle, not from a booking screen. And before you go, drop a comment and tell me which carry-on mistake surprised you the most, or which one you've struggled with in the past. Safe travels, pack smart, and I'll see you in the skies, flying above and beyond.